Hi, I'm Dove Sinclair with the Power of the Patient Project. My guest today is Dr. Greg Charlop, known as the anesthesiologist to the stars. Dr. Charlop is one of California's most sought-after physicians. He has been featured on TV shows such as ABC, CBS, and Fox. After training at Stanford and UCLA, Dr. Charlop built a career attending to some of the most complex patients in the San Francisco area. He has spent years on the front lines of healthcare, treating adults and children with uncontrolled pain and complicated medical issues. He was then recruited to Beverly Hills and Hollywood to partner with some of the most elite plastic surgeons in the world. Celebrities and executives flew in from all over the country for plastic surgery under his expert care. An authority in wellness and advanced nutrition, he's the author of Why Doctors Skip Breakfast, Wellness Tips to Reverse Aging and Treat Depression and Get a Good Night's Sleep. Welcome, Dr. Charlop.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to be
Okay.
here.
So first, can you give us a little bit of background on what your current medical practice is in California and what the focus is?
Sure, of course. So I'm an anesthesiologist by training, and I worked on the front lines in hospitals for many years, like you talked about, with really sick patients. And I've always had this interest in health and wellness and sort of cutting edge anti-aging medicine, which really has just kind of come to life in the last few years. We've just kind of learned that we actually have some control over our aging. We used to think that it was like just a process that happens to us. But now we know that if we do the right things, we can actually slow aging down. So I got into this and I moved down to Beverly Hills. And like you said, I started working with a lot of the top plastic surgeons, and we would take care of a lot of celebrities and Instagram influencers and people like that that wanted to look better and feel better. And it was the perfect match between staying young on the inside and looking good on the outside. These days, I mostly focus on telemedicine, which is speaking with people online, just like you and I are talking now. I'll talk to patients through their computers, like a Zoom call, and we go over anti-aging medicine. We figure out the right diet and the right supplements and the right exercises and mindfulness and everything else to keep you young. And so that's been my big focus right now.
Oh, wow. And going off of that, I know that you said you were focusing on reversing the aging process, and you've developed a 7-week wellness plan. Can you explain a little bit about that and the benefits?
Yes. So we used to think that aging, like I said, this is kind of passive process. It just happens to us. The years go by and we get older. And we have this misunderstanding of what causes aging. And I think most people still believe this today, which is you get older and you start kind of accumulating errors and you're stuck with these, and that's kind of the way it is. So, the example I like to give is, let's say you have a wooden table, all right, and you have this table and you put it out in your backyard and you leave it out there for a while. What will happen to it? Well, it's going to get rain and it's going to get sun and it's going to get wind. And with time, that wooden table is just going to decay. It'll just fall apart. And so that's kind of what we thought aging was like. And so you could do little things like you could spray bug spray on the table or repaint it or do different things. And maybe it'll last a little longer or look a little better. But ultimately, what you could really do is you just take the table indoors. If you just did one thing, if you just took the table indoors, the table would last much longer. Nothing lasts forever, but that one thing makes it last longer. So now that we understand what causes aging much better, and we're learning more by the day, there are certain things we could do. And I put that in this 7-week wellness plan. And I actually talk about it too in my book, Why Doctors Skip Breakfast. And essentially there's a few steps. So one of the big ones are diet, and a few certain dietary changes will actually add years to your life and add a lot of health to your years. Certain supplements, people oftentimes are taking the wrong ones. And with a few changes to your supplements, you'll get a big bang for your buck. Regular exercise, we all know that, but certain exercises are actually better than others. Sleep is a big one. And, I love talking about sleep and I can go on and on for days about it, but proper sleep and there's certain specific things you want to do to get proper sleep really will fight the aging process. And also using technology. It turns out that there's a lot of new high-tech gizmos out there right now that you could use to fight off aging.
So can you tell us a little bit about your book and what readers might get from it?
Right. So in the book, Why Doctors Skip Breakfast, first of all, I start off by trying to convince you that aging is something that we can control and we have more power over it than we thought. And I go into the reasons why we age, and we really have a much better grip on this than we used to. And there's a few specific causes of aging, and we explain them in the book. And I like to try to make things pretty easy to understand. And there's actually a bunch of cartoons, which I can't draw because I'm not an artist, but there's a lot of good cartoons in the book that help explain it. But then we really talk a lot about diet and nutrition, and specifically what dietary changes you could make to get healthier. And the funny thing is, the book actually came out kind of just at the beginning of the COVID epidemic. And so in the book, I talked about some of the stuff you could potentially do to boost your immune system even to fight off COVID. And it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that was there now is really been found to be true, that a lot of the things we talked about, like sleep, for example, as a way of combating COVID, actually seems to be true now. So I think it's a good book in terms of talking about sleep. And one other thing that we talk a lot about is exercise and sports performance.
Mhm.
I work with a lot of athletes right now. That's kind of a big focus. And so a lot of athletes and retired athletes. And there's a lot of things you can do that will improve your performance kind of on the field if you're an athlete and help keep you healthy afterwards if you're a retired athlete.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm an athlete myself, so I completely understand. Now kind of changing gears a little bit, we hear a lot about pain management and medical treatments available. So why do so many patients turn to an anesthesiologist to get better care?
Right. So pain is a big problem these days, and it's getting worse. It's almost two problems really. There's the problem of pain. A lot of people are suffering with arthritis and musculoskeletal injuries. A lot of my athletes have chronic headaches or, aches and pains, some injuries playing sports. But on top of that, there's the opioid crisis, and a lot of people are hooked on pain medicines, and they're hooked on prescription pills, and it's really a very devastating thing. People are dying, people are having trouble working or holding down jobs. It's straining families and relationships. It's really a very devastating problem, and it's really gotten worse in the last few years.
Mhm.
So you asked, why do people go to anesthesiologists? Well, this is actually one of the big things in anesthesia is sort of managing pain um, and finding ways of treating pain, either with drugs or without drugs. And so it's a big part of anesthesia. And obviously it kind of started with people having surgery and they'd have pain after surgery, and you try to deal with that. But now there's a lot of specialized anesthesiologists that focus specifically on pain. And what I want to say about this is, number one, this is a big problem. And we as a society really need to focus on it. We were starting to, and then COVID came along and it kind of distracted us from it a bit. But I hope that we could refocus on it because so many lives are suffering from this. If you have chronic pain, I would encourage you to speak to a pain specialist. And the reason I say that is a lot of times they can tune up your medicines so you don't need as much, or you can use better ones, or sometimes you could switch so you don't need narcotics,
Right.
which is great. But also sometimes you can get these things, and I don't personally do this, but there are people that specialize in it. They do things like nerve blocks, and they could do special procedures with needles and little surgeries and things that actually could treat the pain and get you off pills altogether. So I think this is very important. And then there's also things you could do to treat pain not through anesthesiologists, like physical therapists, for example, can often show you things like stretches and movements and exercises that can help with certain types of pain.
Right.
But the point is, if you have this, don't suffer in silence. This is actually something that many people, you really can treat if you go to the right doctor.
Wow. I didn't even know that there was a whole doctor specifically for pain.
Right, right. And there are pain clinics, and the best, in my opinion, the best pain clinics are ones that involve they're multidisciplinary.
Mhm.
So they'd usually be headed by an anesthesiologist who knows how to do these procedures and can help with the pills. And they have physical therapists and occupational therapists,
Right.
and you all work together to come up with a complete sort of pain plan.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. Well, that's all the questions that I have for you today. But on behalf of the Power of the Patient Project, thank you for joining me. And I will definitely be thinking about some of these tips that you gave.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It was great to be here.